Pokemon Go is a fun game when you don't live in an area devastated by industrial contamination and toxic waste. Pokemon Go is a fun game when the Pokestops aren't at local landmarks steeped in mercury and lead. Pokemon Go is a fun game where innocent gamers don't congregate in areas where the grass no longer grows because of carbon tetrachloride and dioxins and radionuclides in the soil. For the kids in this city, and even for the adults in this city, Pokemon Go should be the kind of game to help them through the hell of their day-to-day lives. It should be a distraction from the omnipresent horror of living in a place that's no longer on anyone's map. A place that the outside world thinks is better off left forgotten. If only playing it wasn't killing them. At the community hospital where I work, we had a substantial increase in the number of patients displaying some effect of being poisoned. Skin deterioration, pregnancy complications, respiratory distress, etc. All consistent with the various environmental pollutants in different parts of the town. Nearly all of those admitted to have been Pokemon Go players. Our city council had a meeting with officials from the police and fire departments, hoping to figure out a way to keep those dangerous locations off limits to visitors. Lots of ideas were floated, but they all got shut down. The city had no money to erect barriers or police the areas. There's simply far too many of them. Signs started to go up. That was the only thing everyone on the council could agree on. The signs explicitly mentioned Pokemon Go and featured the frightening biohazard and radiation warning symbols. No one was deterred though. The poisonings continued. I never played Pokemon in my life. I didn't really know anything about it. As more and more people started to show up at the hospital though, I got the impression I should get at least a basic grasp of what everyone was obsessed with. So when I got home, I downloaded the app. Right away, 3 of them showed up in my living room. I tapped the turtle-looking one and threw a ball at it. It was mine. Pretty cool, actually. Simple mechanics. There's a radar thing on the bottom right, and 3 paw prints under silhouettes of other Pokemon I haven't seen yet. I didn't have any idea where the things were in relation to me, and it seemed stupid that the radar was so worthless. But as I walked around, I eventually ran into one. No, not one on the radar, mind you, but still one I hadn't seen before. I started to understand why people enjoyed the game so much. I found myself wishing the residential areas had more Pokemon to catch. When I zoomed my map all the way out in the distance, I could see those spinning blue towers, many of which were shooting out pink confetti. From what I read online, that's where all the good Pokemon were. It's also where the industrial contamination was. When I got to work the next day, I was shocked to find out those blue towers were in the hospital. When I clicked it, the little blurb said it was in the children's wing. I never go out on that side of the building, but I figured, what the hell, and walked over. Once I was in range, I spun the wheel and all this stuff popped out. Balloons, potions, and even an egg. It said 10 kilometers on it. I threw the thing in my incubator, knowing it'd probably hatch at some point in my shift. I do tons of walking. Halfway through my day of walking up and down labyrinth halls, I checked my phone. Must have been 0.4 kilometers. God damn it! A familiar alarm sounded and I rushed to the ER. Before I saw what happened, I could smell it. A group of teenagers had jumped the fence on the old battery factory. Apparently there are 3 Pokestops inside, 2 of which are overlapping. The third, though, is inaccessible unless you go through the basement. The spot is a memorial for the company founder and is located in the viewing area above a group of vats. As the factory deteriorated, the catwalk leading to the memorial had fallen. To reach the Pokestop, the kids had traversed the profoundly toxic basement. They reached the Pokestop without incident, but then one of them saw something called a Lapras on his radar. One kid, David, headed in one direction while his friends went the other. Whoever found the Lapras was going to yell and his friends could come catch it for themselves. It was David who found the Lapras, but it was also David who, in the process of yelling and gesturing to his friends, slipped. When David slipped, he crashed into an unlabeled rusty container. His friends saw the whole thing. The container filled with contents that had corroded in it over the years burst. From the waist down, David was completely covered with the vicious caustic combination of concentrated acid and various unknown industrial toxins. The friends received several burns on their hands and arms when they hauled David out of the building and into the car. After they pulled the car up to the ER doors, a very kind but very dumb Samaritan who'd been nearby rushed to help. He made the mistake of grabbing David by his foot and ankle. He degloved David's leg all the way to his crotch. The slouched skin splashed onto the pavement as the Samaritan screamed with horror, and the pain as steam began to rise from his own hands. Long terrible story short, surgeons had to amputate everything below David's ribcage. The rest of his skin was damaged beyond repair, leaving him covered with an otherworldly patch of hard grey burns. His friends, as well as the dumb Samaritan, lost their hands. 2 of the ER rooms needed to be closed for 48 hours so they could be decontaminated. Of all the Pokemon Go accidents we had in the short time following its release, it was the worst. One might think that the accident would deter other people from going to the industrial zones. Quite the contrary. Once people learned they could catch a Lapras near the factory, despite warnings and promises to arrest trespassers, trainers swarmed. They knew no one would be there to arrest them. Cops had better things to do. 2 days later, we had a handful of patients with burned lungs, a few with debilitating fatigue, and 2 pregnancy complications, both of which ended in miscarriages. The remains of the fetuses were indescribably deformed. How such deformities could occur in such a short period of time was beyond anyone's guess. I needed to take my mind off everything I'd seen, so what do? I play Pokemon Go. I used a Pokestop at the hospital frequently. Whenever I had a spare moment, I'd go into the parking lot and catch Pidgeys and Rattatas. I yearned for the bigger, better Pokemon that I knew could be obtained from the old factories. I even drove up to the fence outside one and saw something huge on my radar, but I was too afraid for my own safety to get out and investigate. In the brief period I was sitting in my car out front, I watched 6 people hop the fence and run into the factory. I admit I felt a little jealous. I forced myself to get over it. Last night started like all the other nights since the game had been released, but turned into a tragedy felt hospital-wide. Lanisha Davis, who'd undergone successful fertility treatments a few months prior, was expecting 6 tuplets, a first for our hospital. She was in excellent health and only a month away from her due date. She'd never played a second of Pokemon in her life, but her husband and son had. Alicia never knew they frequented an abandoned factory that once made herbicides. Over the few days they'd gone and come back, Lanisha was walking barefoot on the toxins they'd tracked into the house. The pain and bleeding that caused her to come to the hospital ended the same way as it had for the other pregnant woman exposed to the toxins. The deformities of her miscarried sextuplets were hideous. The complications were albino and their limbs were gone. All that remained were round, hard blobs containing lidless, glaring eyes and fully toothed, gaping mouths. Lanisha had to be sedated. She wouldn't stop screaming. The image of those 6 tuplets stuck with me. I was scheduled for an overnight shift, and there was a free bunk where I could have slept, but that was out of the question. I wandered the halls aimlessly, watching Pokemon and gathering supplies whenever I passed a Pokestop. Around 3 this morning, I saw a shape on my radar. It was a big one, and I think it was nearby. 2 other smaller ones, were also showing up. I speed walked in all directions until I finally saw them appear on my map. I felt pretty lucky to have them all come at once. 7 balls later, I captured all 3. A Horsey, a Kakuna, and the big one was an Execute. I looked around. I walked without paying attention to my location in the hospital. When I realized where I'd gone, I shuddered. It was where abnormal specimens were dissected and tested. Dr. Ahad was working on one of the deformed miscarriages from the day before. To his side, about to go into the refrigeration unit, was a large biohazard bag containing Lanisha's 6 tuplets. Sorrow suffused through me as the scenario played out again in my head. As I stared, a feeling I can't explain pricked the hair on the back of my neck. My phone vibrated in my pocket. There was a Pokemon nearby. I checked the radar. It was a silhouette of a big round thing with 2 arms. I remember seeing that online when I was learning about the game. A Geodude. I did my best to shake off my misery as I trod through the halls until the Geodude showed up. I caught it. Had a little moment of excitement from adding another entry to my Pokédex, then returned to my weariness and sorrow. I checked where it was. I was right in front of David's room. He was on a ventilator and he was covered in bandages. Fluid kept seeping through his grey, cracked skin. A nurse was getting ready to change his gauze. I felt such sympathy for the kid. My eyes blurred with tears. When my eyes welled up, I stared at the shape of David on the bed, grey with a round, hipless torso and 2 long arms. My breathing caught my throat. Before I knew it, I was running back to where Dr. Hayden had been working. The room was dark. He'd gone home for the night. I scanned my keycard and let myself in. I opened the refrigeration unit and removed the 2 bags of the miscarriages from the day before. One was shaped like a seahorse, another looked like a cocoon. I thought back to the 3 I'd caught right outside the room. My hand shook as I opened the larger cold box housing the remains of Lanicia's 6 tuplets. The inside of the bag was coated with greyish-red slime, and I couldn't see the contents. I put on gloves and made the sign of the cross. As tears ran down my face, I took out each horrifically deformed fetus and arranged them on the sample trays. My weeping turned to racking sobs as I examined their features. Pink, limbless, wide-eyed, egg-shaped. 6 in a row.